I meant to tell you, I got my, I mentioned you, I got my treadmill, my under desk treadmill today came in, and it's a little, outreach might be hard. It's good for emails, but I just like, I don't know, I got to call you or somebody else and like have them listen to me while I'm doing it, because I feel like I'm just going to be trying to close a supplier, and all they're going to hear is like, it's a little loud.
Yeah, I was planning to use it just like in the morning, 30 minutes, just when I'm doing something in the morning, like not on the phone. Just
I feel like I might be able to do it
in 30 minutes.
I mean, it picks up though. It's like, I think it goes up to like 3.8 miles an hour. So it's like when you get going, like it's a pretty good. I mean, you're not doing like a 100-meter sprint on the phone with the supplier, but
yeah, sprinting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I don't know if you're gonna close too many deals like that.
Yeah. Well, as we're waiting for some people to join in here, we could pop up some questions from YouTube. You guys are quite frequently asking questions on the YouTube channel, which is, a lot of them are really good questions that people can benefit from. So we'll answer some of those as we're letting people join in here shortly.
Yeah, I think this time of the year is, we were kind of speaking about this a little bit in it might have been in the community or one-on-one to somebody, but it's almost like amongst all businesses, it feels like a slow time of year for people start to not want to do anything, like as we get into December. And I think it goes to show, like with suppliers, they might not want to talk too much, right? Or if you're doing outreach, or in your own business, right? If you're just maybe at the beginning and you are just trying to grow and scale and learn, you get to December and you kind of almost want to slow down, unless you're doing like FBM or something, then it's usually crazy season. But there's a tendency, I think, in the summer and in the end of the year to slow down. And there's a direct correlation to your business and its growth and you. It's crazy, but there is,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people kind of in between season getting ready to start the new year, and, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's, people are kind of in an in-between phase.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, if you're doing outreach, you can kind of tell that a lot of suppliers, I mean, if you're doing it at volume, like it's a little different because you're always going to get someone that's willing, but suppliers tend to slow down a little bit too this time of the year. So honestly, if you're not like busy, I always say now is a great time of the year maybe to start systemizing and start working on some things relating to not working in your business, but maybe working on your business a little bit more as it gets slower.
Yeah, that's always a good thing to do during the slower times is, build systems that you might be lacking, so developing SOPs, like written SOPs, or making Loom videos of you doing a task within your business, so that you can delegate it and outsource it to a virtual assistant. All good things to be spending time doing, because that's going to help you build a sustainable business long term, right? Yeah. And if you're not doing outreach in this interim time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, definitely a good thing to be doing.
It's hard though. I mean, developing any sort of SOP or anything, like especially as a new business owner, if you come into this and you're just completely new to it. And the last thing, I mean, like were you thinking about 5 years ago? Were you like, oh man, I gotta write this SOP, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I even knew what that was. The reality of like when you're starting, it's we always say the bull with the horns down. You're just doing the action, and I think that we both agree that like action is still better at the beginning. But if you're a little more seasoned, a little more advanced in the business, it might be a better idea to like take a step back if you've scaled to a certain point to say, well, how can I make things more efficiently? Because you hit a wall at a certain point. If you're trying to wear all the hats, do everything yourself, you just hit a wall.
Yeah. I think there comes a point where, like when you first get into a new endeavor, in business, entrepreneurship, whatever, you're spending a good amount of time doing like learning and just acquiring information so that you can actually do some form of execution because you literally have no idea what you're doing. And so
Yep.
you're spending time in the learning phase, right? But at some point that learning phase can and should transition into execution and implementation. And then there comes a point in your entrepreneurial journey where you're just implementing like a madman, right, or a madwoman, and you're just nonstop going, just doing as much as you can, right. And then there kind of comes a point where you might need to pull back and go back to the learning phase, because it's like this constant growth cycle, right. It's cyclical. And so, but yeah, by far, I mean, it's a balance, but I think obviously the implementation is what propels people forward, but you have to know the information in order to implement it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also the more you can shorten that time period at the beginning where you're learning, the faster you can get to the implementation. So ignorance is like one of the biggest things to anyone that just is starting a business of any sort. It's like if we started a completely new business today, it would be we are completely ignorant to it. We don't know what's going on. We don't understand how it works. And the quicker that we can learn all that information and get to the implementation stage of it, the faster you're going to have the gratification, basically. It's like faster you can get to implementing, the faster you're going to get results. It's just people that stay stuck in that perpetual learning cycle forever is tough, right? Because you never get to implementing. And there's a lot of ways to buy your time or buy information or do something like that where you're able to actually fast forward. And it's like the only life hack I think that there is like buying information, buying time, to be able to get to that implementation stage a lot faster and that execution stage.
Yeah. Yeah. um I mean, we said it the other day, it's a lot of times you're going to pay for something regardless. It's a matter of if you're paying for it in your time or in monetary value, right.
Yeah, Hormozy talks about that a lot. It's like he always says that was one of the, I guess, secrets to how he moves so fast and things is he skips most of the process of having to learn the information
Yeah.
and just is able to get right into implementing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Good lessons for an entrepreneur at various points in their journey. Kanan is joining us here on YouTube. What's going on,
Yeah,
Kanan?
Kanan.
Drop any questions you might have here in the chat. We'll pop up a couple from YouTube. So we got a question here asking, how do you help there, as in the brand, the supplier that you're working with? How do you help their business grow specifically? How do you advertise and optimize?
Yeah. Kind of two separate questions in my mind of like, when I think of how do you help their business grow specifically, I really go back to what I say about like value is subjective. I say that all the time, right? And it's like helping their business grow specifically, I think has to do with what they find valuable and what they need in their business, right? Like we're not going to, I don't know, we're not going to focus on, driving traffic to the other products or to the brick and mortar stores or whatever if they don't care about that, if they're an e-commerce only company, you know what I mean? So we're not going to align the interest with the brick and mortar stores if they don't have them. So it kind of all depends on what they need, right? I mean, what are some examples of like how businesses, like what they want to get out of Amazon?
Yeah, a lot of times businesses just want to get sales volume out of Amazon. They want to get more,
Sure.
sales. I mean, a lot of businesses don't even care about Amazon, or they don't even really have, it's not even on their radar. But if you can show them that Amazon can provide additional sales that they wouldn't have if you weren't in the picture, then that's now going to be a value add to them. And so it's all about what matters to the brand. And that's, like you said, how you grow their business specifically is you go to the brand, which is, the frameworks we teach. You go to the brand with these frameworks and you ask the right questions in order to uncover the information so that you can strategically position the growth measures that you're going to provide for them around what they need, right? You're not going to go to the doctor and it's like the doctor prescribing you something. If you go in with a headache, he prescribes you, something that's going to cure your foot, right? Like it's you got to ask the right questions in order to, you don't just walk into a doctor and he just hands you a medicine, right? He asks the right questions, he uncovers the information. And that's essentially what we're doing here.
Your analogies have been getting better and better. You must be taking a page out of my book. Brad always says that I have like the most obscure, like on the spot analogies for things. So must be rubbing off. Yeah. And then how do you advertise and optimize? Well, I mean, that's all things that are technical. They're all on the back end of things. And the first thing is we always talk about you don't necessarily need to understand how to implement to start closing accounts. You can close accounts way before that, and you can outsource the implementation. How to get into the granularities of advertising and optimizing listings. I mean, that is more than we're able to do on this live. It is something that we do explain and teach more, whether it's on the channel or within the community. So I would recommend checking out the video or that if you're interested in that. But yeah, you don't need to do it all at the beginning. Like there's a lot of people that are a lot better at things than Brad and I are that we outsource to. So
yeah. Tommy here is joining on YouTube again. Nice to have you back,
hey,
Tommy. You were here last week, so you're tapping in again. Good to see you. Tommy's asking, how can I help brands in brand registry on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, if we can get a little more specifics on the question, there's kind of a lot of things relating to brand registry, but you want to just basically explain what brand registry is, like how it applies to a brand and a seller.
Yeah, and so we can briefly speak on brand registry. So there's two portals on Amazon. You have Amazon Seller Central, which is the side that you actually sell on. And then you have brand registry, which is just a separate domain, brandservices.amazon.com. And basically all that domain serves as is just a login for you to get a brand registered. And what the brand registry does is it allows you to actually take control over the brand on Amazon, make changes to the listings that Amazon alternatively would not accept if the brand wasn't registered. You do need a trademark in order to get brand registry. That is a prerequisite. So you'll want to have a trademark, or you could enroll in IP Accelerator, which is an Amazon program. Getting a little bit granular here, but I'll drop a link for the brand registry YouTube video, which goes into detail on brand registry, what it is, how to apply for it, and so on. So I'll go ahead and drop that link here.
Yeah, definitely. And while you're doing that, I mean, just kind of going off of that, the follow-up question about, similar to what we just answered, right? About like, how do we pitch brands? How do we offer value? Run PPC, all their stuff. So basically like a general value prop question, right? And again, like going back to just saying that we want to, you can't fit the square peg in the round hole. We want to be able to provide the brands with what they need. And so it is, and we see this a lot of times with brand new beginners that are doing this sort of the outreach process, right? Is that they go in and they like love bomb the brand. Like, if you know what love bombing is, they love bomb with value props. They just go in and they're like, optimization, PPC, brand stuff, like they're, you know what I mean? And it doesn't mean anything to the brand. And so that can really get you nowhere because the brand doesn't understand this stuff. You have to translate for the brand, and you have to do things and frame them around the way that the brand wants to be perceived. Like, where is the goal that they want to get to? Do they want to just increase sales, like Brad said before? Do they want to, see their products more represented correctly? Like, what do they want? And then frame your offer and your pitch around something like that, as opposed to just love bombing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so Kanan here is asking, how do we educate a brand that has more sellers on its listings and narrow it down to strategic sellers? Would that be a larger PO in business terms? So basically, Kanan, to answer your question here, that's a good question, because that's exactly what you want to do, is you want to educate the brand. So first things first is you got to help the brand understand that there's no strategic advantage for them to have a multitude of different resellers on the listing. It diminishes everybody's vested interest in the brand. It creates price erosion and price tanking. And there's just no reason to have beyond 2 to 3 sellers. 2 to 3 sellers could be justified if the brand comes at it from the angle and says, hey, the brand says we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. But even then, we have multiple different objections that we teach our students on how to overcome exactly that. We want, we're afraid of putting our eggs in one basket. Well, here's a handful of objection handlers to overcome the risk mitigation.
I thought you were going to say, here's a handful of eggs.
Yeah. And so basically, would that be a larger PO in business terms? Yeah. I mean, that could be part of it. A larger PO is again, we have to go back to uncovering those reasons, right? And so, is the brand volume motivated? If they're super volume motivated, then that is definitely something that is going to pique their interest, right? And they'll find attractive as a larger PO. But at the same time, we got brands that you could stick $1 million PO in their inbox and they won't even bat an eye at it, because they know, not only do they know, like, and trust us, they've been working with us for years. It's just not all that matters to them, right? They know they want things under control on Amazon. They want, the proper brand promotion. They want, the story, the message, right? They want to articulate their brand in a way that goes beyond just moving as many units as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I always say one of the kind of ways that I frame it when you get that type of response is to say that the position that you were in X amount of time ago is significantly riskier, or was significantly riskier than the position that you're going to be in by doing this. It's a really nice way of framing it, because they can relate to where they were, but they have a fear of where they are going to go. And so just kind of framing it around that, that's one of the objections that the ways that I overcome that objection.
Yeah. And another thing you can say about that is, here's, giving this out. I mean, this is a good game right here. When a brand says we have, like when a brand says we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, I mean, which is riskier, having a multitude of sellers or having one seller? Do you have control now? Right? When a brand has everything going on Amazon out of control, multiple different sellers, right? They say, well, we don't want to lose control by going into one seller. But the reality is that we are putting the control back in the hands of the brand and facilitating that process of Amazon. We are not taking any control by any means. The brand is now regaining control over what they didn't have, right? When they have multiple different resellers, it's just framing, right? Framing that reframing the brand's way of thinking, because right now they're thinking, well, hey, I have the control because I don't work with one guy and I'm not over reliant on one guy. Well, actually, you don't have any control, because there's a multitude of different resellers on there who have the ability to control and manipulate your price and change things around on the listing, right? Like, our job is to put the control back in the hands of the brand.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever it is, like, or if you're watching it live, like play that back, listen to that again, because really, really good point there. I think that there's a certain point before we get to Tommy's question here, but like I had a call today, right, where there's a certain point in my head where things switch. Like I'm normally not a hard sell. Like it's like crawling with the brand. You're coaxing them along, and then there's a certain point for me at which I see it's like the shark. They see the blood, and they go for it. And there's a certain point, and I don't mean being aggressive. I mean like being an authority. Like there was a call today that I had that's been a long-standing call where it's like, dragging their feet. And then, setting yourself up as like, I am the authority. I know more than you, and doing what I say to do is what is going to help your business. Obviously, you're going to say it a little nicer than that. But I think that it's important at a certain point, because it just shows you like people want to learn from more. They want to be around people that know more than them. And that's what we are. We're an authority in this space, not us, but like if you're a seller, right? You're an authority in what you do. And we are naturally programmed in this wholesale thing to like not think like that. We're like, I just want to get the account. Maybe I can just close the account. You should be closing the account. You should be an authority in the space, and you should be confident and convicting in what you're saying. It just comes over time, but something to kind of keep in mind when you're reaching out.
Yeah, you want to put yourself on a level playing field as the brand.
Yeah. Tommy asking, my budget is very low, something around 5K. Brands have a higher MOQ, which is a minimum order requirement, in which I won't be able to entertain that brand and build a good relationship. So what's the best solution?
So first of all, brands, 5K is enough to spread across 1, 2, 3, multiple brands, right? Like 5K is actually where we recommend you start with your starting capital. Yeah, you're going to need more capital over time to scale, but that's where you want to get to the point where you're using the house's money, right? So you inject 5K into your business, you just snowball it until you scale to 6, 7 figures, and now you're just using the money from the business, right? And so you can certainly make an investment into, some wholesale inventory with 5K, spread it across several SKUs. That's generally what we say to do. Don't go wide rather than deep. Spread it across a couple different wholesale accounts, buy a few different products. Don't dump your entire budget into one product. Seen that before, right? Make sure you're ungated in the brand before you buy it. If you're not ungated, get the invoice before you buy it, right? We've seen it before where sellers will shell out the money for the inventory, and then they get the inventory, try to send it in. They're gated. And even sometimes with brands, Amazon with newer accounts can be difficult about invoice ungating and things like that. And so, yes, you have a much better chance of getting an invoice approved by Amazon with the brand, but that's just some pieces of advice. So reframe your starting budget that's needed a little bit more, and keep sourcing more brands, and eventually you'll find them.
Yeah. When you call a brand initially, is your goal to provoke their interest regarding any issues they have on Amazon, or is the goal to initially open a wholesale account? It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And the answer is yes, because it's a double yes, actually. So
I was going to say, yeah, there are
basically in two
options.
parts. So you have the initial approach is that you're opening a wholesale account. That's the way you approach every single call, is that you're opening a wholesale account. And then if you're met with resistance, that's where you go to the first part of your question, which is to provoke their issues and, ask them a calibrated question. So it's a yes and a yes. But I would say generally, take the path of least resistance, which is going to start with opening, just saying you're interested in opening a wholesale account. And if they say, if then you're met with, we don't do online sellers, we don't do Amazon, now you're going to start poking at them and prodding. I'm going to link the contact suppliers video, which includes an exact script of what to say down here. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly what Brad said. Like path of least resistance, super important. Again, kind of going back to that value bombing, love bomb, right? Like you don't want to do that unless you have to. Goal should be to get the price list.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's a good question, Pigman. Check that video out.
Yeah.
I'm also going to link our totally free resource, which is some of the top objection handlers we use to close 6 and 7 figure brand direct accounts. This is going to be a super valuable resource for you guys, completely free. So I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat here.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, the thing that people do is they will oversell a little bit, right? And in most cases, right, if it's just a neutral tonality conversation and I get, hey, I'd like to open a wholesale account. Sure, here's the price list. Usually I go, all right, thanks. We'll be in touch and hang up. Right. I don't start I want to run the price list. I want to see if it's profitable. I want to and then reevaluate at that point, because I have more ammunition. I have more, I'm able to tell, hey, all your products are unprofitable. Why is that? Seems like the sellers don't have a vested interest in what's going on if they're not selling it profitably. Right. So gives you a little more ammunition, but just don't oversell,
Yeah. And so Tommy is asking, so can I ask from brands that to provide their authorized distributor so I can place smaller orders with them? But earlier I have heard that Amazon sometimes does not accept distributor invoices.
Yeah, it's tough. It really depends. They should be good with it if it's an authorized distributor, but if they're not, you have to confirm that you can get an LOA from the brand. There are some cases in which a distributor, even an authorized distributor invoice, will not work and you have to get an LOA from the brand, but usually your distributor invoices are going to work if they're authorized by the brand. You can also ask for redacted documents, and all that stuff, like Brad always says.
Yeah, you can you can absolutely go to an authorized distributor to place either a smaller order or any kind of order if you can't get a direct account with a brand, provided the brand is not limiting, and controlling their Amazon, right? Because if you go to the brand and they say we're not, we don't allow Amazon sellers, then you go turn around and buy from a distributor, well, you may run into issues from the brand on Amazon. But if the brand doesn't care about what happens really on Amazon, and it's just the kind of thing where we only sell to distributors, then ask them for the list of authorized distributors. But again, get the invoice before you buy to make sure you're ungated.
Right. A lot of times these brands will have pretty strong distributor networks, so sometimes it's something where they already have things set in place. Their distributors are valuable to them and they want you to purchase through that. And that's totally fine as long as they're authorized,
Yeah, exactly. And so if you guys have any last minute questions here, pop them here in the chat. Things rocking and rolling. We got a new YouTube video up on how to find profitable wholesale product suppliers. Definitely something you guys will want to check out. Pigman is asking, how many meetings are you having with brands excluding follow-up till you get exclusivity? What is the goal of each meeting?
The thing that's kind of throwing me about that question is excluding follow-ups. That's pretty much all it is, right? It's you have your one initial contact and then you have all follow-ups. Do you know, is that, are you reading that the same way?
Yeah. I mean, I think we could just clarify kind of the lingo here. So basically, when you do an initial outreach to a brand, all right, like that's called your initials, right? When you've contacted a brand for the first time, that's an initial contact. When you contact for initially and they don't get back to you, or they answer, they say we're not interested right now, and then you follow up, that would be considered a follow up. And so what Brandon's saying is that many times, in fact, 95 to 99% of the time, is you close an exclusive after following up with them many, many times, right? And so I wouldn't quantify all of those as meetings necessarily. They're really just phone calls or emails or touches. And the more expansive they are, the better. And then they start to progress into the form of more of a formal type meeting where maybe you jump on a Zoom, introduce yourself, your company, what you're all about, and how you can actually help their brand, and pitch decks and things like that, right? So um, you do want to usually have a goal or a somewhat of an agenda for each call, at least in your own mental framework. If you are having a formal meeting, you'll want to probably send out an agenda so that everybody is coming to the call knowing what's going on. But yeah, these are all great. It's a good question. But there's not really a specific set of number of meetings. It all varies, based on where the brand is, how hot, how cold they are, how long you've been contacting them for. It all kind of
Yeah, it's the brand's resistance a lot of the times, right? Like if we could close an exclusive on the first call, we would.
yeah,
It's happened before, right? But it usually doesn't. That's the thing.
yeah,
So all
yeah.
depends on the brand. But the point is, like, the important part is to follow up enough so you can get to that point. If you stop following up, you'll never know. Uh, how can I maintain and organize the documents, meaning supply chain in hand, like invoices, LOA? So if Amazon asks for it later, we could send it.
Yeah, so there's multiple different ways you can organize this. You can store them, in like folders in an email, or I'd recommend like storing them on a cloud like Google Drive or something. Just make a folder for invoices, LOA, things like that. So yeah, I mean, something you always want, a good practice to keep it on the back burner just in case Amazon asks for something. But again, I mean, we don't we don't have any LOAs because we don't need them. We buy directly from the brands. We have exclusives with a lot of those brands, right? And
Yeah.
so the LOA comes more into play with the distributors, and invoices, unless you're I mean, invoices, we get invoices for every purchase, right? And so you just
Mhm.
store them away in folders, and if you ever need to use them, more so for an Amazon reimbursement, right? If you send your inventory and Amazon loses it, that happens pretty frequently, and then you can submit the invoice to get reimbursed there.
Yeah. Tom, you keep talking about like things for distributors, right? It's not that we're anti-distributor, but in a lot of cases, right? You said you have that, I think it was 5,000 or something like that. A lot of cases, distributors, if you're going with like larger brands, it's kind of like a get in, get out, buy at a promotion. Like it doesn't have the consistency that we like, and so that is part of the reason why we don't do it. In addition to obviously the risk factor for like larger distributors, but like even smaller distributors, it depends on what it is. If they're like a small to medium sized distributor, it can be good, but it also can be a little less consistent than with the brand. And you're also not going to be able to lock down in most cases that exclusivity, which is what we all really want. So there's less consistency there as well. So I'd urge you to kind of like push you towards brands a little bit more.
Yeah. And Pigman is asking, sorry for the confusion. How soon do you pitch exclusivity? How many formal meetings would you have for brand? What is the goal of each formal meeting? Again, going back to what I said before, basically, there's not a set number of formal or any type of meetings. It's all dependent on the brand's level of resistance. So, I mean, that could be meetings over the course of 3 years. It could be meetings over the course of 3 months, right? Like it could be even the first meeting, that has happened, like Brandon said, rarity, but you'll definitely have to follow up pretty consistently over
Yeah.
time. Right.
I
You
think
can
the
get it.
reason that it's a hard question to answer, right, is because it, we're talking about like an intangible thing here. we're talking about the emotional game of brand direct wholesale in answering this question, in which we say when you have to push, when you have to pull, when you have to lay back a little bit, chill out, when you have to be aggressive. And like those are all things that we teach how to do that in the outreach process. So without the context of any of those things, without hearing the meetings, without understanding the context of the situation, it's hard to determine like a real number for that. But that comes with learning the emotional game, which is again like the stuff that we teach.
And so Kane is asking, is it good to start PPC on listings that first need improvement on keyword side just to show brands positive growth month over month, and then later work on updating listings?
Running ads without optimizing a listing is like painting a car with no engine. It's in order for someone to find and be able to access stuff in PPC with keywords, it needs to be in the listing. You got to be able to rank for those keywords, and they can't do that unless it's in the listing, or it's very hard to rank for a keyword that's not there. So from a logical standpoint, I mean, I would say completely optimized before ads. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you want to maximize your organic traffic and conversions on the listings before you run a single dollar of paid ads. You know, like if you're running paid ads to a listing that has one blurry image, like you're just basically throwing dollars in the garbage because your conversion rates are going to be super low, and so as you're like when you first close a deal with a brand, especially if it's an exclusive, I remember that feeling, right? Which should be the feeling. You want to reverse that scale and get them a real small win, right? Like you want to get them a win early on in the process to prove to them that they made the right decision to partner with you, whether it's exclusively, whatever. And so in order to do that, my recommendation would be to optimize their listing soup to nuts. A+ content, keywords, bullets, title, brand store, images. Like you can do all of that piece by piece. And so when you do that stuff and you give it to them, don't just do everything at once and give them the whole thing. Do one thing at a time and then give
Yep.
them those things over time. And you can even set like time objectives, like quarterly goals and things like that, to make things more systematic about how you give it to them. And so it feels like they're, making progress. Hey, we just hit our first monthly goal, right? We said, we were going to get brand registry in for month one, whatever it is, right? And so make that the focus rather than showing them, and make this the focus. And like our pitch is never how much we're going to increase sales by. Like we never tell a brand, we're going to grow your sales by 117%. It's just like we're never pitching that, because it sets the conversation down the line up for, false expectations or expectations that may not be reality. And so that's how I would recommend approaching it.
Yeah. Again, great. Like play that back if you listen to it. Just piecemealing things out like that. It gives the brand more wins than just all at once. Helps them understand better too. Tommy's saying, if I got direct authorization, if I got the brand direct account, do I still need to get authorization from the brand? So additionally, I can show it to Amazon as proof.
No, not necessarily, unless Amazon is running, it's creating issues for you. If Amazon has you gated, or if Amazon is, yeah, that's probably the only reason is if Amazon has you gated, then you may need to show an LOA. But if you have direct approval from the brand to sell on Amazon and you're ungated in the products, then there shouldn't be any reason for an LOA, unless something happens to come up on the back end of account health. But it wouldn't be an IP claim because you buy directly from the brand. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Just to
not
clarify,
really
that's
something we want to have.
yeah, just to clarify, like that's kind of what we were talking about, right? Where it's like that getting the issue where you would need the LOA or something like that in a lot of cases would come from, like Brad said, the IP complaint, which would be issued by the brand. right? So if you're dealing with the brand, I mean, unless they're selling to you and then issuing you an IP complaint, which is a larger issue, right? Then you shouldn't have anything to worry about there.
Exactly. Yeah. Guys, these are some solid questions. These questions indicate that a lot of you guys are taking the action and involving yourself in the day-to-day process with which is, super important. I mean, we said it at the beginning of this live call, which was that initially it starts with learning the information, and then down the line you start to implement the information. And so, we always push, implementation is super important. You guys got to be putting in the reps.
Yeah.
And so we're closing out here. We'll be back in action next week, live on Tuesday, 6:00, going live every week. So tap in for some free game, drop some comments, let us know you're here. And so one more question here about how do sellers like Pattern do exclusives with big brands? Pattern runs the show, man. Brands apply to work with Pattern because of, it's a big, obviously it's the biggest Amazon company ever, right? They're the biggest Amazon reseller out there, so they have the leverage to do whatever they want. They're like a tech company. So.
Yeah. But same principles apply. They're just doing it at a bigger scale and better. So,
Yeah. And model after the best, right? Like a lot of, businesses, some of the best brand partner businesses out there are modeling after, Pattern, us included, right? And so you always want to model after and emulate after, businesses that are doing it the right way. So that being said, guys, if you do want personalized one-on-one mentorship from both myself and Brandon, peek under the hood type mentorship, come in, scale your business, go ahead and link our application here in the comments section. And any last minute words?
Yeah, no, I think that we talked about, again, the implementation versus the understanding. And, if you're able to fast track the understanding and the knowledge, I think you're going to be much farther ahead in the implementation side of things. And so if you are looking for that personalized stuff, specific situations, and to be involved in a mastermind of other motivated sellers, then the Operation AMZ community might be for you. So check the link out, and if you apply and qualify, and we might see you in there.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Peace out. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.